Hi, Jane.
Hello. Nice to meet you both. I've been watching your videos. didn't connect you to who you were on Facebook or messages. So it's lovely to meet you both.
It's really nice to meet you, Jane, and to have this opportunity to talk to you. Tash, do you want to explain how you found Jane?
Yeah, so probably about a year ago, maybe even a bit longer now, I came across a video on Instagram of the first one was Jane talking to a reporter. It's quite hard to understand it all because there's obviously loads of...
It was a demo, wasn't it?
Yeah. There's all sorts of drama and stuff. Yeah. I got the gist of things and I realised it was about her grandchildren. And then I think maybe a few weeks after that, there was another interview of Jane talking to the police and really telling them how it was. About trafficking, and I was just like absolutely fascinated and like, wow, need to talk to this woman.
Yeah.
Sent them to Rebecca, and then you contacted Jane, didn't you?
I did make contact with you, Jane, and then through Facebook, and then you got taken off, I think, for a big few months because you just disappeared. And then I saw you come back and contacted you again, and we've actually managed
I had to change profiles because they keep knocking me off, obviously, because I'm telling the truth.
Yeah. It's really difficult, isn't it, with all the censorship, and if you're truth speaking, they take you off.
And especially the things you're talking about.
Yes. So, Jane, do you want to start by telling us what has happened to your grandchildren? Because it's another incredibly unjust and cruel situation. But you've spent a lot of time digging and finding the truth and speaking your truth out. So would you like to start by telling us what happened?
Yes, well, my son went away with a lady quite quickly after they got together. She was an Italian lady, and she took him over to Italy about 6 months, not even 6 months, 3 months after they met. And he was 20, and she was a bit older than he was. She was about 25. And the next thing I knew, I was getting messages to say that she was pregnant. And they were going to go and move down to Folkestone in Kent. They were coming back from Italy, and they'd moved down to Folkestone in Kent. So I asked my son if we could go and visit, and we did. We visited just after she'd had her first baby. And they were in a very small accommodation at the time. So we just stayed in a hotel and just went down for long weekends, and didn't really get the feel of the dynamics of the family. And then just very quickly after that, she had another baby. So we had 2 grandsons. And every chance we got, we went down to visit. And there was a daughter as well from a previous relationship that she had. So I had 3 grandchildren. And I was working quite hard at the time, and so really couldn't really get like long weekends, but we went long holidays, but we went for weekends and stayed in a hotel. And so it was kind of not really getting the dynamics. He wasn't able to come up to us. I didn't know the reasons why. He stopped working. He was a very good chef. He'd been working since the age of 15 as a chef, so he'd become a head chef by the time he was 20. And he stopped being a chef, and he started selling fine watches on eBay, and became very good at it. And whenever we went down, he seemed to be constantly on eBay. So it didn't really get a chance to talk to him, really. But it was 2018. My son rang me up and said, "Mum, his partner," I'm trying not to say names, his partner has said that we could go away on a family holiday to Greece. And I was just so happy because we'd never been away and had quality time together. And we were going back to where my son was brought up in the village in Greece, because he's half Greek. And so I rented this huge villa. My brother was meant to be coming with us, but sadly he passed away in May because he had cancer. We booked this wonderful holiday, and we got there and we just had an amazing time, and my son and the children, and I saw the dynamics of the family for the very first time. And my son was just wonderful with his children, and they were five and 6 by this time, and her daughter, and we just had a wonderful, wonderful holiday. There were indications that there was odd sort of behaviours from mother. The children had been poorly while we were away, and there was no mothering. I mean, I was sort of taking the children and mopping their brows, and when my son wasn't, so I was sort of stepping into the role of mother, and I just thought there were some odd things like that. And I took a client away with me as well, because my brother hadn't been able to come, bless him. I took one of my clients who I was very close to. I'm a carer. And so she came with us, and she was mother of the children, was trying to take over the care, and kind of bizarre. There was not something.
It was a bit off. Yeah,
it was a bit off. Yes.
Yeah, it just didn't sit
anyway,
right.
on the last night of the holiday, I mean, my son had just had a wonderful 2 weeks, and he came and sat out with me, and very late he put the children to bed, which was what he did, and everything was him doing it. He put the children to bed, and he just came out, and after he'd been out for about an hour, he just started pouring his heart out to me about what his life had been really like, and and it had been horrific. She'd joined the police as part of her abuse of my son, and about a year prior to this holiday, and it had escalated to a point where he just couldn't bear it anymore. And he'd been to the police prior with a man that had sort of recognised what was going on. For a short period, he'd had a partner in his new business, and she didn't like it and soon got rid of him. But in that short period, he'd recognised that he was being controlled and abused by his partner, and the children were being abused. And he told me that since he'd been to the police, they told him that he hadn't got any evidence, and he needed to record. And my son's on the Asperger's scale, I must say. And he had really took this literally. And obviously, because he was working from home the whole time, he just had his laptop open the whole time and had recorded hours of abuse. The abuse could go on for 2 days.
Was this sort of verbal abuse and
verbal, physical, psychological, mostly psychological abuse? You're useless, you're rubbish, you're sick, it was just a constant tirade of you're nothing, you're psychologically mental, and so I said to him, well, when we go home, you must go and sort of go to somewhere where you can speak about it at least, because he was scared. He said he was scared to go to the police because she said that if he ever went to the police, they wouldn't believe him. They would help her. Yeah. She would leave and never come back with the children. He would never see his children again. And he was scared to death of losing the children because he absolutely loved his children. So I said, well, at least try and get to go to an appointment where you can go and talk like a psychiatrist or something, and be able to offload for all this, offload what's going on. And I said, and in the meantime, you send me the recordings just in case you decide, that things
to
just
do something,
escalate to do, So I I went in my summer house with my headphones on and had to listen to hours of abuse. And so it was hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Anyway, so and then she knew my son had told me things had come out, and she knew. So she brought his father over from Greece, who my son hadn't seen for about 15 years, and he was highly abusive. That's why I had to leave Greece. And he was a chronic alcoholic. He is a chronic alcoholic. And she brought him over on a ticket, and my son didn't want him. And
that's cruelty.
That's abuse again, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh yes, it was absolute. She thought that if she brought his father over, that I wouldn't go back down
To keep you away as well then. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it was again isolation.
Yeah.
And it just escalated from there. It became unbearable, and he had to call the police because he was causing havoc. She was giving him money to go and buy drink, and he was coming back into the home
drunk.
And drunk. And
this is back in England.
Yeah. Yes. So what happened was I went down because he said, I've got to go to the police, Mum. This was before the night that happened, the incident. I have to go to the police. I said, I'm coming down. I was very brave. I went to a hotel and went down so he could give a statement to the police. And he was in there for 2.5 hours with a lovely young policewoman who, she called me in as well. And she said, have you ever heard the word gaslighting? Have you ever heard this, that, the other? And I'd never heard the word gaslighting or anything. I didn't know anything about it. She knew, she recognised how severe it had been and wrote a crime report. And that night I was driving back and my son had to call the police again, because he had physically assaulted Lucia, not Costas, the father, the grandfather of my ex.
His father, the Greek.
Yes, had assaulted Lucia, had assaulted Costas, and my Costas was hiding in the bedroom with the children, barricaded in, calling 999. And I was calling 999 I had to come off the motorway because I was scared to death he was going to do something to the children. And so we were both on the phone, and then I was on the phone to my grandchildren, trying to keep them happy. And let's read a story with Grandma.
Distraction.
Distraction. And anyway, so the police came after 2 hours. The police came after she had took his father away to a hotel. The police came in and she started saying things about Costas, saying that he was mentally unwell, that he was on psychotic drugs, that he had weapons in the house, that he was... And she just turned it completely round, making it out that he was hiding in the bedroom with paranoid visions and this is the police report that they sent to the emergency family court hearing. And there was nothing mentioned about that Costas was the victim. No. The children were the victim, that Lucy, the mother was the victim. She was the victim.
She was the victim.
There was there was no mention of that. And so, so that happened, and then we had the emergency court hearing. A lot happened in between, but we had the emergency court hearing. We were introduced to the social worker, and he came to the house, and I'd gone back down. Once he'd gone, I went back down to be with my son, and I was there for 4 months after that, because it was just horrific what was happened. The police rang a couple of days after the statement had been taken and said no further action. And then she moved the children out of the house. Is everything okay?
Sorry, it's a puppy. We've got the puppy here. Sorry.
Oh, puppy. I love puppy. I've got my Nelly. She's asleep. She's an old dog. We've
got one old one.
Yeah, we've got one old one.
And one baby.
Sorry, going back. So they said that there was going to be no further action from that night.
Yes. Well, not from that. And from that night, they kept that police report but when my son went in to give a 2.5-hour statement with this young police officer, West,
they didn't use any of that.
They rang my son and said, when there's no further action, there's not enough evidence. And my son's like saying, but there's, I'd looked online to see what it was, what crime, and they should have taken, he was never allowed out the house on his own. So they could have checked his phone records. They could have checked, there were so many components to control and coercive abuse, which was what it was. Physical abuse and child abuse, and they didn't interview the children. They didn't, nothing, absolutely.
They didn't want to learn. No.
Did they?
No,
they didn't want to look.
No, they didn't look. And there's things like, "Oh, just get over it, Costas. She doesn't want to be with you anymore." And just they made it out like she just wanted to get, go. And, there was the 7 years of abuse was just nothing,
And it would have been different to be the other way around, and it would have been the female, that was suffering from this controlling abuse.
Well, yeah. I think, going on in the story, I think there was connections there. Well, I know there was connections there, and yes, and the social worker and the solicitor. We got a solicitor, and we found out that she was working for the other party and knew her. We didn't know at the time.
A conflict of interest, isn't it?
Unbelievable. Everything was set up. I believe it was set up at the holiday. I really do. That was the time when she wanted out. He had raised those children, and it was now time for them to go into the family.
Into the system.
Family. Yes,
so do you think? So was she cold enough to not really have any affection or connection to these children? Do you think?
None whatsoever.
She had nothing. There was no. Yeah.
She had no connection with the children. We have recordings of her saying that she absolutely hated them. That she would be better. They were. There's quotes that I heard on the recordings was, "These things are disgusting. They destroy your life." She literally hated the children.
She had the children, so with the
she had the children
having them taken away into the system.
It's almost like Princess Diana. They needed a family line, a bloodline for the family, and my son was a perfect sort of candidate because one, he had Asperger's, so couldn't read emotions very well.
Right.
He was highly intelligent. Very clever, high functioner.
Yeah.
And I believe he was targeted for this family to have children. I didn't know any of this at the time.
No.
This is just what I've learned since, and her connections and the connections with the London connections over here.
So what connections does she have? Can you say that?
What are her connections?
Well, her family are a big law firm in Naples in Italy. Okay. And her mother and her grandmother are both in the occult connections to the satanic cult. She had been injected as a child and been used. She wasn't brought up by her mother. She was the one child that they'd used, that they'd taken and lived with the grandmother.
Right.
She wasn't allowed out. She wasn't allowed to mix with other children. She had severe mental issues because of what had happened to her as a child. And
so she's been MK Ultra'd in a sense, hasn't she?
Yeah.
She's been fragmented.
I don't know these words that you use. But
no, but it's that.
I kind of heard them.
They fragment. There's a fragmentation of the mind when they're children. And it kind of,
you get multiple personalities almost, don't
you? And the whole thing of not being able to nurture and love their own children and all that, it comes from what's happened to them as children.
They're emotionally down.
And it's the mask. I did look into, and I'm not going to, obviously I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but while I was with my son, those 4 months that we were there together, I heard an awful lot more of what how life had been like and what she was looking at and reading and studying with her mother when she came over. And, and I started putting sort of the puzzle pieces together. And one night we just sat with this huge chart on the floor and I put 9 traits narcissist in the middle. I didn't know about her family connections and the connections to people over here at that point, but I could see there was something not right,
Yeah.
And so I started investigating sort of narcissism and 9 traits, narcissistic traits and the 9 traits, and I put them all in sort of bubbles, and then I put in the evidences in all these bubbles, so I could see whether it
narcissistic
was
narcissistic behaviour.
Yeah. Oh, and it was. And I also read sort of books, and it said, that you can't really put a 9 traits narcissist into a therapist on a therapeutic.
No,
because they're so good at hiding it and mirroring and, copying what you're doing. And that's what she was doing in Greece with my client.
Master manipulators.
She copied me, she was copying what the other person's doing to, you probably know a lot more.
Well, my mum's a narcissist. So my mum's a severe narcissist. So I grew up with a narcissist.
So you know a lot about narcissists, don't you?
Very dangerous people.
Very dangerous. I mean, I did a case study. I mean, I just looked at a case study of the young man that thought he was a tennis player. And I mean, his partner was going on and on about the police and how she was in anti-terrorism, because she had 9 languages. They took her into anti-terrorism. She was going to MI5 one day a week. And I mean, we believed her. I mean, because she was so clever.
Yeah.
And it seemed so clever. And
when they tell their stories, they tell it from a place of belief. It's quite extraordinary, really. Because they believe in it. They believe things so well, and that and there's the whole scenario that
and there are small truths in it. Because when I started unpicking the story, when afterwards and trying to find out what was real and what wasn't real, there were truths in parts.
It all stems from truth, doesn't it? And then it just gets completely blown out of proportion and just fantasize. It's like being a fantasist, isn't it? Basically,
and those kernels of truth, then they could go.
But I did what was I going to say? But this young man that was a tennis player. I don't know if you know about him. Well, he wasn't a tennis player. He really believed he was a tennis player.
Convinced people he was. Yeah.
Yes, and he went away on holiday. But before he went with this girlfriend from university, and he had been severely abused as a child, and not allowed out. And he murdered his mum and dad because they pulled him up about a credit card that he'd used to take money to go away to this tennis tournament in New York with this girl, and it was in Liverpool. And he actually murdered his mum and dad because they'd
because they were going to expose, kind of exposing.
That's how dangerous they are.
Yeah, it's the exposure that they don't like, isn't it?
Yes,
it's the exposure, and they always surround themselves by people who big them up as well, so they choose weaker and lower people than themselves, so that they're almost like idols,
and they can manipulate
them, and then those people protect the narcissist, so that whoever the narcissist is against ends up becoming bullied by a whole group of people.
And that's why she was telling everybody else how bad he was. And she joined domestic abuse clinic just around the corner.
It's exactly what they do.
Came home and hit him with the book.
Yeah, because that's her way of protecting herself.
You, bang, bang, bang,
Yeah, that's terrible. So what point would
she met the solicitor there, and the solicitor was an Italian solicitor.
Oh.
And they became friends, and we were desperate to get a solicitor, and we rang 2 solicitors, and they said there was a conflict of interest. And we had no idea why there was a conflict of interest. But it's because they were going to this drop-in centre on a rota. And the 3rd solicitor said, I can see you immediately. And it was this one that knew her. It was the one that knew her. And we didn't know she knew her. And she'd introduced her to the detective inspector. Yeah.
So where were the children at this point? Were the children still with her, or did they get...
No, with the mother.
So they did. She kept them.
Her father had bought her a house just round the corner.
Right.
Not bought her, rented her a house just round the corner. She was stalking and harassing my son by this point. She was just parking up outside the house with the children in the back of the car who were desperate to see their daddy. I mean, it was just abuse. It was continued abuse. And she said, we're playing the inspector game, and, and you can't go and see him. But she'd sit there with them in the car, and they'd be begging to see daddy, and
it was just
cruelty.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we went to then we had a visit from the social worker, who I found out straight away. I started digging into his past because he was 73 years old, could hardly walk.
What?
Was lying, absolutely lying. We had evidence of the day he came to my son's house. We have an ex-social worker who she was talking to, the mother, because it was my son's watchmaker's wife. And she'd gone to what his only friend he had. This is his only friend, to spread wickedness to him. And we have a witness statement of his wife saying the children were begging the whole time that she was with them. They were going, "Can we go and see Daddy now? I want to go and see Daddy now." On the same day, the social worker was sitting in my son's house saying that the children didn't want to see him.
Oh, it's awful that they say that. That's just their genuine, that's what they feel out, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, at the time, we didn't know about the witness statement. We didn't know. But obviously, we knew that the children would be desperate to see their daddy because he was their primary carer. You know, so
they love him.
I knew he was lying to us, you know. And so I was just constantly on the phone to social services saying this man is telling lies. I couldn't understand it. You see, you can imagine I didn't know anything about corruption.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, why is this man lying?
Why? And why they were lying.
And how you were treated and not listened to. Because if you have no idea, then
you trust the system.
Yes.
Social services, when you don't understand it, you think it's there for the good.
Exactly. You think they're going to help us. And then they do the opposite.
I thought, okay, so, you know, the police, because she had a relationship with two officers as well, which I knew because she was buying presents for them. And it was part of the abuse with Costas was she would say, you know, "Oh, he really cares for me." And, "Oh, he," you know, and it was innuendos that there was more to it, you know. And she bought presents for this detective inspector. So I just thought it was because she was having an affairs with police, you know, and she probably was, and they were probably passing her around because she was so mentally ill, and probably, I don't know, you know, but and so I just thought it was the police that were corrupt. So when the social services started being corrupt, you know, anyway, I completely got onto this social worker and looked into his past. And I found out that he'd been running paedophile rings in his past. And he was running a trust called Hartstein Trust, which was actually taking children to elites in London. And there was some news reports in the Times and which you could read between the lines. Do you know what I mean? Because they don't put the whole truth in.
No, they don't, do they?
And it was confirmed by a psychologist and a reporter who were looking into a paedophile ring in Essex. And they contacted me because they saw things that I'd put on Facebook about this. Not then, I wasn't putting things on Facebook then. This is further down the...
Yeah.
Yes, and they confirmed to me that they were part of this massive network that had been covered up because they've been investigating it.
Yeah.
An elite paedophile.
So to all the sort of judges and probably high up police.
So, he had been sacked from Swindon County Council just prior to coming to Kent and committing perjury. So he'd been sacked from Swindon. He came to Kent, and I believe that they brought him in for this. And
really?
He wasn't there.
He must be at that age. Why would they be employing? Yeah, why would they be employing a 73-year-old? It's like you say, it was all part of the setup.
Yeah, it's the connections.
He's the right person for the job.
The right person for
their job. For their job.
Their job.
Yeah.
For their job. It happened. That happens twice more with they brought in somebody to look at the investigation. He was retired in the police because we put in the complaint. Eddie Fox, he was retired.
Just making sure they've got people that are in
the right people, isn't it? It's having the right people.
Yeah, they've got the right people to do the right job.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that happened. So I said, right, I need a new social worker because this one is corrupt.
Absolutely.
And I went to have a meeting with her. I mean, my son was just, you can imagine he was just broken. And so I said, I need to speak to a new social worker. And she'd just freshly I don't think she was even out of university. I think she was doing
placement.
She was going back to placements, you know.
Looking like 19,
and,
20.
She listened.
21.
She listened to me. She listened. She took everything in. And as we were walking out of the interview room, she said that I still do have to go along with what Mr. Tasker's put in place.
Whoa.
And that was after I'd told her how the police had been corrupt, what had happened to my son, and so
even though she knew it was all wrong, she has to go along with it.
Yeah.
Well, they
She
do.
was telling me.
They do, because
you know you do the job because you want to do the job properly, which produces me, which then leads all the ones,
all the corrupt ones,
or just have to go along with it because they're not strong enough.
And also, if she's only that age and she's still doing her placement, she's wanting to do her career, isn't she? She's thinking, this is my degree, this is my social, you know. That's probably her first glimmer of any corruption anyway. From what
I mean, it was. It has affected her, you know. She called my son, not last Christmas, the Christmas before, when I'd completely lost him for a time, where he tried to commit suicide. But he said, Mum, she rang me at Christmas and she was crying her eyes out, just out of the blue, you know. So it must have affected her. She said he couldn't understand what she was saying. She was sobbing down the phone, and that was the Christmas after they were abducted. So anyway, the Section 7 report, she did try. She did try, and they recognised psychological abuse. At least there was physical abuse still going on as she was on her own with the children. You can imagine it was just a horrific time. The children were coming back and reporting suffocations, beatings,
quite ritualistic, isn't it?
Called the police. They couldn't breathe, and we were calling the police.
That is part of the MK Ultra thing.
It's the fear, isn't it?
Well, yes, to do it until
you can't
breathe, and then bring them back. And it's almost euphoric in a very strange way, isn't it? The coming back's quite euphoric. Oh, chilling, isn't it?
So the Section 7 report was ready. We had the final hearing, and that's when the police put in 139 pages of police disclosure.
Wow.
And they did it on the day of the court. So
on the day?
On the day. We never got to see. And we were driving home from this was 2019, June 2019. And we were driving home from the court reading. My son was in the back of the car reading all this paperwork that had come through, and it was complete and utter lies.
Yeah, all for her. All siding for her, basically.
Yeah, it was just shocking. And then they had to postpone the final hearing. We had all our witnesses there. We thought, this is it. You know, we're going to have our day in court.
Yeah, we're going to get justice.
Oh, sorry, Jane. You're all right. Take a little minute.
Yeah, it's just that going back there.
Yeah, do a nice deep breath.
Yeah, and then that was the beginning of June, and then it was Father's Day, and it was his contact was, he was getting contact, obviously, and his Father's Day, his contact was the week after, so we'd gone down the week after Father's Day, pretending that was Father's Day, you know, cards and presents.
Celebrating it as you,
Yeah, we'd had Christmas. We'd gone over for Christmas. We'd had Boxing Day with them that Christmas when they weren't with, you know. And then we'd had this contact for Father's Day. We've been down, you know, between that as well. But those were the two significant. But we'd had Father's Day, and we'd gone out for a meal. And we were a bit late because we'd had a full day. We'd been for a walk in the countryside, and we'd gone for a meal, and the children wanted ice cream, and it was coming up to time for contact to finish, and it was about 10 to 5. I said, I'm sure she won't mind if we're a bit late, and just text her and just ask if they can have ice cream. And he texted her, and she said no, 5 o'clock. And I will call the police if they're not there, and you know. And I was like, oh my goodness. So we wrapped, they had half their ice cream because I just, you know, and then we got there just about 3 minutes past 5. And that is the last time I saw my grandchildren. And
so
I was stood at the corner, and they were hanging on to the daddy, and she couldn't get them in the car. And she had a trick that she did. She bought a present, and she would throw it into the car and say, the first one in the car gets the present.
Oh, gosh, she's evil.
And they would get in the car. And she tried it this time and it didn't work because
they know.
That night she'd been packing up and saying they'd never see him again.
So they knew.
They never said anything. They were too scared to say anything. They never mentioned anything to us. The whole time they were with us, they were just having too much fun, probably, and just, because things don't come.
Living in the moment like children do.
Living in the moment like children do. And so eventually my son, said, you have to get in the car, and I just was... Because I had never been with a crosser, I'd never been there, and I was just watching them.
Yeah, the whole thing's just evil, isn't it?
Anyway, so we came home that night, and the next morning, Tim Farron's, my MP's office, rang me. I was at work, and she said she'd had a phone call from a police officer in Kent, and they were telling me, even before Costas knew, that they were telling Tim, she said the children have been abducted, and I just collapsed. And I got hold of Costas, and he just found out, and so we were just.
So what you're saying is the mother had taken the children out of the country.
Yeah, that night, and we found out that the preventative steps weren't in place. That's when I'd had my doubts about the solicitor, and my husband had. My husband kept saying there's something up with this solicitor, because he'd been in his past, because of his past, he had. I'd never dealt with solicitors and thought what was their role or anything, but when we found out that she hadn't got the preventative steps in order, I knew then that she was corrupt, because she told us she had. She told my son that the preventative steps were in order, and she didn't have the passports, and it's okay, she can never get out of the country. So we called the police. The police knew, because the school had called the police to say that they'd had a message to say she's just gone on holiday. So the police officer's ringing Tim saying, oh, you might get a call, because she knew that I was fighting with everybody, trying to, so I don't know why she called my MP, but she probably thought I was going to ring my MP. And to say that the school had a message to say she'd gone on holiday. So the police officer was telling Tim, don't worry, you might get a call off the grandmother, but she's just gone on holiday for 2 weeks. And we knew there were 2 preventative steps. There were 2 orders from the family court that said she couldn't go. Yeah, never mind the preventative steps order.
Yeah.
The preventative steps order would have just had tips, which is like they have a group of, that stop them from, so if they disappear, then there's a trigger at the, it's like other things that can happen. Trips or something, or tips or something they call it. I can't remember what it stands
like triggers the whole thing off, doesn't it?
It triggers, yeah. So that if she moves even out of the tap, what I mean? If she's, anyway, so that wasn't in order, and she left. And then all the corruption in Italy started, and that was that. But the police, they opened a crime report. My son called the police, the abduction. And they said, and then it was just fobbed off. And so we requested a copy of that crime report, and they opened it and closed it on the same day. And they lied to us. They were lying to us, saying that they were doing this, they were doing that. It was on such a person's desk. It had gone to the CPS. I've got all the emails, just lies and corruption.
Basically, they were all in on it, all involved.
Covering up, they were all in on it. And so we went to the High Court, because we were saying, no, it's not a holiday. No, she's not. They were just making excuses. And so I said, we have to go to the High Court and get a court order that says that she's illegally removed the children from the country. So we went and got that court order, and I've got a picture of Costas with this court order, smiling, thinking this is it,
it's going to help me,
This is it, we went to the police, and they had to open a crime report because it said the children were illegally removed from the country. And I thought, they're going to go and get them now. They're going to go and get them safe. And they didn't. They did it again. and the court, they just kept saying it's at the CP, and it was just again
just passing
saying
it on, passing the buck to somebody else. It's not our responsibility.
They said it's gone to another officer now, and it's gone to this officer, and this officer's in control of it now, and then they wouldn't let us ring up. We couldn't speak to anybody.
No, they completely cut you off.
We were ringing 101 because we couldn't get through to anybody, and they had this statement that they read out to us that said, you and your son have been updated and there's no further information. And so whenever we went through, we would get this
automated
thing. To anybody.
That is so corrupt in itself, isn't it? That is how you could be reporting something completely new on the case or anything. Yeah. You can't just silence people
just
like that.
Blocked us, completely blocked
silence, just completely silence.
Yes, so that's where we were at, and then we went. My son was very adamant that we couldn't change the solicitor because she told him that if we changed the solicitor, then the social services over there would get involved, and then it would just be completely corrupt. So we went to the first hearing, and she said to my son, we had ICACU, which is the International Children's thing, but she told my son that he couldn't talk to his caseworker. And I was saying, yes, you have to talk to your caseworker. And I was ringing Reunite, and he was saying, no, Mum, we've just got to listen to Rona. We've just got to listen. She knows what to do now. And he could have had a free solicitor, which he didn't know, and he was paying more and more money. Gosh. She gave him a solicitor in Italy that had nothing to do with family court here. It had nothing to do with abduction, nothing to do with family court, and wrote a report on him that was even saying that he was mentally ill.
Gosh, they'd like to use that mentally ill thing, don't they?
It was all a complete setup in the Italian court, and I went with him to Naples, and we said, oh, it'll be all right. And then it came back that the children had been there for too long.
I mean, this is international, this problem with the children. It's international,
Yes, they're all corrupt.
And they're all linked. We know that the Masonic elements are international.
Yeah.
So, it's happening everywhere in the world. It's very bad here. It is bad here, but...
Well, the solicitors that they have at Reunite are meant to be as corrupt as, they're all corrupt. But, they don't want...
No. Yeah. I mean, there's not anyone brave enough out there to break the corruption.
Yeah.
So we're left with this system, aren't we? And I think we're getting that more and more now, that people are coming forward and hanging their wigs up and, coming behind the backs and saying, we know what's going on and keep going. People are recognising the utter corruption now within the, we've got whistleblower social workers, we've got solicitors that are hanging their wigs up and saying we can't cope with this anymore, and actually helping as well. We've got one that is
clean solicitors, but
and I guess come a long way. I don't want to stay in that. What happened to me, I believe, that it's happened as well for good as well. I mean, it's just terrific. I mean, I have a lot. My faith is very strong, as you might have figured from if you've been watching my lives. Yeah. And I know that, end time prophecy is just, I can just see things happening like every day, thinking, oh my God, because I'm very, very, I'm very clued up about, because I'm a Bible studier, you know what I mean? So I'm like, whoa, so I know that things are happening that are shifting. And if anybody thinks the Bible's just a storybook, now is the time to open your Bible, I'm telling you. Because, wow, it's just daily basis things are going that are like, whoa, this, it's all aligning.
So you can feel it shifting.
Oh, my goodness, yes. There is an alignment with what's going. Anyway, I won't go into that. So
and the momentum's building, isn't it? I feel, me and Tash are part of that momentum in the exposure and the interviews. It's to get it out there, get the momentum going with everybody to say, come on, guys, let's get organised, let's get together.
To get the story out.
Really?
Yes, that's what this is all about. And so I started going on the Facebook groups and recognised that there was, this was not just me.
No.
And unfortunately, it just broke my heart to see how many people were being, stripped of their children and stripped of their assets, just like us, just everything just gone, and how many suicides there'd been, and how many people were just crying out for help.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, there's more to this. And just at that time, it was just, and I do believe that this was a God incident. A man was coming through my husband's work, and James Spencer Butler, and he was coming as a social worker. We had various stories from him. He was very corrupt. We knew he was telling lie after lie to my husband. So we thought something weird going on here. And he was saying, well, have you got any temporary accommodation? Do you know any of that temporary accommodation, one day to my husband? Because he was coming and going, and my husband has a cafe. And so he'd become quite, my husband's quite a chatty person. So he'd become quite, not friendly, but,
a regular, bit of a regular.
It was a regular, yes.
Yeah.
He was bringing the odd other social worker in as well. And it just rang alarm bells to me, because nothing seemed to, every time my husband came home and said, oh, he said this, or he's doing that, and I'm thinking, what the heck's this man doing? Do you know what I mean? It just didn't add up. 1 minute is like, he's working in Newcastle, the next minute is down in Essex, and the next minute, and I know that, social workers do work like from recruitment agencies and things, but it was just the other stuff he was saying, and that he was getting a temporary accommodation near very poor, poverty-stricken areas, around the coastal areas in the northeast and Cumbria. Right. And then one day he asked us if my husband knew of any temporary accommodation. So I said to him, yeah, well, we've got a caravan that we know, a friend of ours. So stick him in there and, see what he's up to.
Yeah. Watch him.
Yeah, so we offered to take him to see this caravan. Well, he didn't. He took the gentleman that owned it, took him to see the caravan, and then the WhatsApp messages started, and that's when I figured out that there was something very dodgy about what was going on. And so I asked for his name. I got his name. We got his name because we had WhatsApp then, and we got his name, his details, his telephone number, his email address, everything. So I started looking, and he was working for a research hospital in Qatar, Sidra, Sidra, Sidra Research Hospital.
Sidra Research in Qatar, in the Middle East.
Yes, and that is a brand new hospital. 2013, I think it was built. It was built by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it was built by Qatar Foundation, and they have World Economic Forums in that hospital. Like they have them in the Middle East, and they have them here, and
they hold them out. They hold them in the hospital. Yeah.
In 2015. They were elites, and Prince Andrew was there. Elites.
Yeah.
And I just think this man was brought to me it was like I'd found the biggest one of all the lot of them, you know what I mean? It was just, and I've found many, many more since then. But this one was just, whoa. And it was Caritas Care Limited he was working with.
What's it called, sorry?
And Caritas Care, which is a Catholic care company.
Yeah.
And I went to see her. I rang him, and he gave me a load of lies on the phone. I said, I've got to be on. What happened was the gentleman that had the caravan, when he started getting messages about having great big satellite dishes being put on the side of his caravan. It had a satellite dish. You didn't need another one. You know what I mean? This was for international.
This is bigger.
This is for, and this caravan was kind of where it was like right at the back of this. It was a lovely caravan site, but it was like where the old caravans were.
Yeah, like the more run down
at the back. They're waiting for people to die so they can take the caravans and put new ones on,
Yeah.
Which is what they did, actually. This gentleman did pass away. He was a lovely friend of ours, and he's very, very old. He was, he passed away.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when our gentleman friend found out that this was real and this could be child trafficking, he was like, I don't really want this to happen in my career.
Yeah, I don't want to be involved. Yeah.
So then, of course, we didn't want that to happen either, you know what I mean? So I'd got all the evidence that I needed.
Yes.
And I rang him and I recorded him tell me a pack of lies. And then I went to Caritas Care. I was actually going to take my daughter somewhere shopping and I just was so angry. I mean, I didn't sleep or eat or
do anything. It consumed you.
I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated to think that this is what they were doing to our children, because I didn't know at that point, you know. And when I saw this connection, and I hadn't investigated, I'd only investigated Christopher Tasker before that, you know, the one that took our grandchildren.
Yeah.
And so this was just like, you know, at that time, I was just like, you know, something's going on, but I don't know what it is, you know, why so many? And the figures didn't add up, because I was looking at the figures of adoptions and fostering and just didn't add up, you know. I just thought something strange going on. But then this came along, and then that's when I realised that this was child trafficking, child trafficking.
So the reason they wanted these deprived areas was to find the children who were at risk. So this is why he was wanted in his caravan. Yeah, their children they consider at risk.
Yeah,
so,
well, but the thing is that they privatised fostering adoption. I don't know if I've got time to sort of go into this, but they've in Tony Blair started it off with his white paper called Adoption Vision for Change, and what he wanted to do was to make it invisible, right? Really, you know, to become a corporate business.
Yeah.
So that there's a difference between local authorities and where the children. So once it's like crossing county lines. Once a child's gone,
they disappear.
They can go, you know, and it doesn't matter where they've gone. And they also abolished sort of the guardianship laws of following on where children go. So that was all gone.
Continuity of care sort of disappeared. The aftercare thing,
you know. And so I was looking at the minutes of the meetings. Are we all right for time?
Got about 10 more minutes, Jane. But
we'll do a follow up.
With this is just
we
your
will.
story.
Yeah, we definitely do a follow up.
Really. That's really. I mean, it's just the main thing is that. Just one other thing to do with that was at that time I was looking at the minutes of the meetings, because I've realised they were doing this new thing. So I looked back on the minutes of the meetings, of the council meetings, where they were introducing these agencies. And so I looked at our minutes and I found this man called Sandip Mahajan. And Sandip is DIP, which is very important, because Sandeep is usually double EP.
Yeah, double EP, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and he came as a scrutiny officer to a number of councils, and like
scrutiny officer.
Around a scrutiny officer. They have like, if they have certain, you know, whatever they do, they've got to go and scrutinise it in a committee. So they have a scrutiny committee.
Okay.
And he started off as a scrutiny officer. Hello, and then he moved to regional senior governance officer. The adoption senior governance officer for our coast to coast adoption agency, which is our private corporate business here, and it was right across the north of England. And I found out that he was a director of 44 global companies.
Whoa. 44 global companies. This old Sandip.
Well, I think at the time it was 40, but now it's 44. I keep having a look at him. So he's Steinhoff, Ibex, Pepco, Balfour Beatty. It's like global.
all of the stuff that you hear of.
He's a multi-billionaire, not multi-millionaire. He's a multi-billionaire.
So why would he even have these jobs in the government?
Why did they need him?
Yeah. Why would he have
an adoption agency?
Yeah.
Well, he's a logistics expert and a finance officer.
So he was doing the money and getting children
from A to B.
Well, he was overseeing the whole setup of this new corporate business.
Whoa.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he'd been sent from government. And if you look, I won't go into that, but if you look at every setup of every adoption agency, they've all got people that are strategically. Oh, sorry, just a minute. My thing said I've got 10 minutes. They're strategically placed at the top of these agencies.
These agencies.
Yeah,
and they're generally multimillionaires and
they're called regional adoption agencies, RAAs. If you want to look at your regional adoption agency, it's RAA or VAA, which is voluntary adoption agency.
Right.
Because those are the tentacles. Those are the
starting
children.
Point.
Yeah, that's the regional agency, and then they've got all these little fostering agencies under. Fostering agencies.
Fostering and adoption. Yeah, both.
Yeah,
but it's great. It's great the research you've done, Jane, because we need to understand how they're operating and how their system works, so that we can expose it and take it down.
Well, I'll just give you. Anybody can do this. This is the assets. This is Gov UK. This is Gov UK, and it's their assets. So these fostering agencies are assets.
Yeah,
the
they're all on there.
Yeah, and these are the adoption and fostering agencies. This is 31st of March 2020.
Look at them all.
Now, you go onto these and you can find, if you go onto Companies House, you can go and find all the directors of these fostering agencies. And there's hundreds of them, right? Because they're all making loads and loads of money. And I found just one which you might sort of be a bit shocked at. I can't remember what it's CYS or CYM. Anyway, you can go and have a look.
Yeah.
It's run by Earl Guinness has got one.
Has he?
Earl Guinness. I don't know his first name. I can't remember his first name. His wife was on the log of the Epstein.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There are all these high-ranking elites that, this child abuse is part of their ritualistic,
and they're not there.
Yeah, because they're taking them for different things, and a lot of them have got connections with. A big one now is life sciences.
Life sciences, right?
Horrific.
Sounds
anti-aging. Beauty products,
right?
Stem cells.
They're all to do with the skin and looking young and
living forever. It's not just skin; it's living forever.
There's cells, cellular level.
They're injecting. They're even injecting stuff into themselves. They can even get their own machines now that do it at home, and they just think they want to live forever. They're sick. Absolutely.
Immortal. They want that immortal.
It's satanic. It's absolutely satanic.
Yeah.
And we've got satanic arms and we've got life sciences arms, and they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
Well,
they'll help each other, won't they?
Whatever they can use a child or a child's body or a baby's body for,
they
is the money.
Yeah.
It's all about.
Yeah. Well, child trafficking is the highest. Isn't it? It's above any heroin trade.
It's more money than drugs. It's a lot more money than drugs. And unfortunately, it's our government that is implementing it and allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
It's genocide. And it connects in with the New World Order, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's depopulation. I mean, they're just killing two birds with one stone.
And they're just stealing children, though. Yeah. They're just stealing.
Just taking our children and
they're stealing them. We had one girl just crying out. She said, they haven't had time to do my assessment and my waters are broken. Do you think they'll still take my baby? And I'm just crying. It's
awful, isn't it?
So
very, very hard.
We're getting it out there.
Yes.
They're trying to stop us.
Yes.
We were on a march in London at the weekend and they arrested the main player, took him out.
Really?
Yeah, Billy. Yeah, bless him. Facial recognition. They said
the momentum is not falling away, it's growing.
Yeah. It's growing. Yes, it is.
We've sort of come to the time that we need to stop
Yes, we need to go.
But
yes.
thank you for telling us and sharing us the story, because you've done so much research yourself.
Yeah, your research is wonderful.
Well, anyone can do it. I'm not anything clever. I'm not a clever person, really. I'm just a grandma, and
You've done it.
And I look at my whole life has been children, because I was a nursery nurse, and then I was a mum, and I was a grandma.
And you've not given up. You've not been put off by being bullied. You've kept going.
No, I'm
and you're
not.
still going.
Now I've got the common law people, and we're going to take it to the absolute top, and the human rights, and so that's why I'm busy printing all my evidence out, because I've got a new burst of
Are you in contact with Sean? Do you know Sean?
Sean Gisling? Yes, and Andy Devine. Well, the people in Birmingham, and we've got people in Middlesbrough. We're all we've got a human rights lawyer in Middlesbrough who's an Ethiopian gentleman. He's fantastic. We've got lawyers. We've got lawyers that have come on our side because they can see the corruption. So we've got people that are helping people to get away. You know, so there is hope. There is hope.
It's lots of hope.
There is hope.
Growing in momentum.
We have to get to the bottom of this.
Yes.
We have to get to the bottom of this.
So Jane, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we will
Thank you for having me on.
It's been
And I hope it wasn't
absolutely a
too
pleasure. And as harrowing as
traumatic.
your story
I'm
is.
so sorry. And I've got a telephone call, so that was good timing. Jen, she's
And it's
another
really
campaign. You'll have to have Jen on. She's fantastic.
Oh, is she good? Yeah, we'll talk to anyone who wants to talk to her.
Bye bye, my love.
Bye, take care. Bye.
Bye bye. Switch me off. Hello, Jen.